Hey, awesome Paradigm clients, welcome from around the world. Thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. Very grateful to have the opportunity to just talk to you about things that we've learned and to be standing here on this stage with my awesome friend Jaden Zubal. Jaden, thanks, and appreciate you being here. Just a quick thing about the two of us, because not all of you are our personal clients or maybe have not met us or know anything about us. I grew up in the 70s and early 80s, and very short, but what's important here is that you understand what drives us and why we think the way we do, I believe. Very poor on a dairy farm. I wanted to go out and chase a safe, secure job. I ended up doing that in the Navy. And I amassed quite a bit of wealth in my early couple of decades in the military as a nuclear submarine officer. What happened to me and what changed my financial focus and made me focus specifically on this and find Paradigm Life as a client early on was that I lost half my family's wealth in the Great Recession at a time when I really wanted to have that money available to be able to go spend time around my kids. So it was a watershed event for me, and all of us have those kinds of events, and I know Jaden does too. So we both work here at Paradigm, and I'm excited to be part of the team. Jaden?
All right, yeah, so let me just give you a little bit of an introduction to my story as well. A little bit different than Gary. I found Paradigm when I was in my very early 20s, and at this point, so grateful that I did. Because my story is I grew up in a situation where money was not talked about. Money was looked at as a negative thing. We avoided it. We ran from it, basically, in my childhood. And as I got older, got into my 20s, I got married, I had kids, and I had a situation happen that really cemented for me how important having a financial framework really is. Okay, so I have twins that in just a couple months here, they're going to be 7 years old now. But they were born 3 months early, spent the first 3 months of their lives in the hospital in a NICU. And during that time period, while they were there, we had obviously a lot of emotional stress, a lot of things going on, a lot of chaos in our lives. We got home, and soon after we got home, I remember getting a bill in the mail. You probably all have similar stories to this, but we received that bill, open it up, and it says, for the time that they were in the hospital, the bill was something like $1.3 million. So this big number, and I'm in my early 20s. Don't know what I'm going to do with that right now. Obviously, health insurance helps with that, so it's good. That is part of our financial structure. But there were some other big pieces of the puzzle that came in and solved it, right? One of them being the life insurance policies, which hopefully many of you have already set up with us. Now, those policies, with those being in place, what I did is take a policy loan, and I paid the hospital. That allowed me to use my structure and my framework to take care of some major problems. They cut down the bill significantly because we paid them up front, and we got our lives back on track. So it makes all of the difference, and it really just cemented early in my career how important it really is to have the right system, the right framework, and the right operating structure in place.
Thanks, Jaden. So what you'll find is that those of us who work at Paradigm Life and are your agents, we have a lot of things in common. We're all very focused on growing our own expertise to be able to serve more. We're very focused on maintaining control and working with clients who have an interest in also being able to maintain control for their family, for their future, and to be able to gain back time, and something that is different than the more typical financial advisor world, which essentially says, hand your money to me, the professional. Don't ask too many questions. Leave it here. I will control your financial future for you. And a lot of people have decided over time, like I did, that's not a path that resonates with you. It's not a path where you want to outsource all of the things in your world to somebody else and hope that it goes well. Truly, it's the only thing in our financial or in our family lives that we just outsource to somebody else, and we've been told that's the way to do it. So we don't believe that. Most of our clients don't. I'm preaching to the choir because I know all of you are amazing clients, and you want to know, how do I read the map? How do I get the map moving me forward? And that's what tonight is all about. That's what the operating system, financial operating system, is all about. Jaden, let's get started here. So quick, almost housekeeping kind of stuff here. So we aim to go about 60 minutes and have some Q&A session at the end of that. Sometimes a couple of our live streams have gone a little bit long, and I think some people in the East Coast were asleep, so we are cognizant of that because we don't want the Q&A to be an afterthought. We never have one of that, but Jaden and I are going to make sure that we finish early so that we can have some great feedback. So write down those questions. We love to get them. There's a chat function, obviously, on this, so we'd love to do the Q&A. Put your questions in there. We'll keep track of them. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to get a replay of it. It probably takes us a week or two, so be a little patient on that. There's a workbook. Hopefully you've downloaded. I saw already in chat that our team is out there giving you a link to that. Make sure you download it. Great opportunity to take some notes in there as we go through things. And we will stick very close to the workbook. So if there's a question in there, we will cover it. And then finally, there are a ton of resources, QR codes, links at the end of your workbook that will cover specifically things we're working on here, plus a lot of extra material on the topics that we'll go over. And this one really is just a visual of what I just talked about. Make sure you can get the workbook. That's what it looks like. And then going back and getting those previous videos, if you go to your client portal at Paradigm Life, you'll find in the education section, you can filter by different types of media or different topics. And if you go to the live, or if you go to the, it doesn't say live events section, you'll find the live stream and other webinars that we've done. But we go all the way back to the beginning of these live streams that started in 2024. All right.
Okay, so to get things started off tonight, though, we're really going to spend the next, let's call it 15, 20 minutes, talking about the perpetual wealth strategy and the 4-3-2-1 framework. If you were on our last live stream, there were some introductions to this, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper tonight, really try to help you guys understand what the 4-3-2-1 framework is and how you can apply it to your own life. So that's going to be step number one, but then we will circle back around to some concepts that hopefully you have already learned from us long ago. The hierarchy of wealth. This is something that we touch on almost every time we talk, probably if you're working with your wealth strategist, and I think it's very important to make sure that we cover the hierarchy of wealth each time and that we put our financial picture inside of that framework. Okay, it's a really important framework to look at. Now, some other stuff that we're going to talk about, and probably the most exciting part for me personally to talk about, is optimizing, not suppressing, human behavior. Because we live in a time period where it's really easy to suppress human behavior because of things like AI. We have AI tools that we can type in whatever we want, and we can essentially train Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, all these different AI tools. We can train them to give us any answer we want, any response we want. Right? I have some stories I'll tell tonight to talk about that and give more context to it. But it's important to understand that human behavior still plays the biggest role in our financial picture.
One more. Oh, then the Q&A we talked about. Great. Okay. So 4-3-2-1. So what does 4-3-2-1 even mean? Think of it as like a rocket taking off. The rocket being the future that you want to have for your family. 4, 3, 2, 1. So what do they specifically cover? I'm going to start this off and we'll go back and forth. And again, maybe 10 minutes on this topic, but this is fundamental. This is the roadmap and then the little notes about how do I operate this roadmap? What is important? What do I need to check on? What are things out there that help my advisor help me understand how I'm doing? Where are vulnerabilities? Things that we're not thinking about that could cause us to be kicked off of this. All right, so the 4 dimensions. So I want you to think about these. These don't have to happen sequentially, and they're not really about like milestones that you hit as you go along. It's more about how are you doing. I'm going to use an analogy that I thought of as I was preparing for tonight. And really, it is about a family who's going to go around the world on a sailboat. Right? And they're going to spend a lot of time doing it. They don't really know what the end of the journey is, but they've saved up some money. It's in a bank account that they have a credit card for, that they can buy fuel for the sailboat, and that they can get some supplies and some food and things. And so they're starting off on this thing. So there's some things you'd want to know before you take that kind of a trip. That sounds like an amazing journey for me. I love sailing, and I would love to do that with my family someday. But you'd want to know, like, how is the boat doing? Is it in good shape? Has it gotten the maintenance carried out? Do we have some extra sails going? And how's the food supply, and can we resupply out there somewhere? So what time of the year are we doing? There's a lot of things you would want to do to get ready. But frankly, you could start off with none of the preparation, right? There are people out there sailing who don't have any food with them, very little water, and they have no clue if there's any extra sails, and they're all worn out already, right? So those are people who in their financial lives are operating paycheck to paycheck, maybe even worse. Maybe they're homeless and have no something devastating has happened and has wiped them out. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about families who can make this journey. And so you start off on the sailboat, and you have a few months worth of food, you have a few months worth of supplies, and we're in what we call financial certainty. What this means is that you have a really decent chance, you're comfortable, you have a decent chance with some emergency funds, but maybe it's only 6 months of expenses. It's not a huge amount. And in this financial certainty world, you have a solid, secure job that anything could happen. You could lose the job. However, it's not that likely. You're not the next person up, or your company's not about to fall apart. So there's some certainty there. and you're feeling fairly comfortable, but you don't have a lot of wiggle room. Like you're just making it and everything is safe. And so, yeah, you're comfortable. You do have a life raft, but it's not a brand new boat. It's not exactly what you would have wanted. And the other thing that's important in financial certainty is to recognize that predominantly for most people, the income, the things that feed the family is you. It is you and maybe your spouse, and is you all earning money to feed the family. You're bringing in the bacon, so to speak. And if you were to go away and you didn't have that protected, then the family would go from pretty comfortable to wiped out right away. In financial certainty, to get to the certainty level, you have to protect those income sources. And so again, for most of us, that's protecting with life insurance. It's protected with maybe disability. It's doing things to make sure that one thing that's keeping us financially sound is still there. As we start to build other things, that can, along the way, replace that. So the next level then is financial vitality. You're starting to feel more than comfortable. You're starting to get excited. You're starting to think about maybe we should invest in some cash flowing things. Maybe we should get some help around the house, maybe get a house cleaner, right? So back to the boat idea, you get to this position where you've started to use some of your money to create other things. Maybe you pull into harbors and you help other people, you teach them, they pay you for it, you start an online teaching course. You're starting to have a little bit of passive income coming in, but it's nowhere near enough to totally replace you. So you're still having to do that, right? And so in the financial vitality world, maybe you can hire one person to come and help cook and maybe run one of the watches of being the navigator or steering the ship, but you're going to have to do a lot of it yourself. So it's still a lot you, but it's not all you anymore. You're getting breaks. You're able to, back when it was just you in financial certainty, if something were to happen on the boat, well, you'd have to go fix that, and the boat couldn't go anywhere because you're the one that was sailing it, right? And so it's a lot more continuous. You have the ability to handle situations. In the real world, what does this mean? It means maybe you have 12 months of expenses. You have a much stronger position. You're fully insured against the loss of life, called human life value kind of thing. You have some of your assets very well protected. And so in the sailboat world, maybe you have some extra sails now, and you have some extra life rafts, and you have an extra amount of food, and some of it pre-stage already paid for at the next port visit. You're starting to build that resiliency. All right. When we get to financial independence, this is you're independent, which means financially free. There used to be this really popular movement in the real estate world when I used to go do presentations right before 2020 and COVID came around, and it was called FIRE movement, the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early. And so what you've done is you have passive income sources that have replaced your earned income. And that's great. But you don't have enough to go do everything you want to do. So the thing is, when you retire, and all of you who are out there and are retired, you could probably agree with this. When you retire, every day is a Saturday, which means you're actually spending more than you were when you were working. All right? Shout out to Kenny Lundgren. I got to smile on that one. So every day is a Saturday. You're spending more, but your friends said, join the FIRE movement, and now I've retired, but I don't have any cash flow that exceeds what I have for expenses, so I'm stuck. I have this great free time, but I don't have anything to do. But the other awesome thing about financially independent is that now you get to start working and doing the things that you love to do and go to work when you want to on a better lifestyle, but only because you want to do it. So on my sailboat initiative, this is you've hired 2 people, and they're trading off cooking and piloting the boat. You don't ever have to do it. You don't have to worry about navigation. You can check on them. You can see how things are going. Maybe on Sunday mornings, you just like watching the sun come up piling in the boat, so go to work and go do it. But you don't have to do it to feed the family and keep the wheels on the bus, so to speak. Then we get to financially free. So financial freedom is, my very simple way of explaining it is, you never look at the right-hand side of the menu when you go out to dinner. But it's more than that. It's being able to enjoy your dreams, live a bigger life. And my example here with the sailboat is you have so many people that are taking care of it, and it's a bigger boat now, and it's much more cushy and comfortable. And maybe you put a helicopter pad on the front of it, and you get on the helicopter one day because you guys decided we want to go feed people in the charity and come back and catch the boat a week later. So you have the ability to do things that maybe you didn't even dream of before. And the last point I want to make on this 432, or on the 4 dimensions, the initial discussion on this, is that it's not stagnant. So you can imagine that financial certainty was 6 months of expenses, right? And you performing a lot of the tasks. What if you change what the future is going to look like, and you decide we're going to live on a moon base, on the human base that's on the moon, and that requires not $8,000 a month in expenses, but now I have $100,000 a month. If you only have $80,000 or $100,000 saved, you're nowhere near even financial certainty for that new life that you just created. So this can cycle back and start over again. The point is just understand, how am I feeling, how are my assets doing, where am I on being able to sustain things if something goes wrong. So hopefully that was helpful on the 4 dimensions.
Okay, so we start with the 4 dimensions, right? Then the next step is three what? In this case, it's 3 pillars. So our 3 wealth pillars start with cash flow. Many of you have probably heard us talk about this, but the idea of cash flow is we have to have income coming in to even cover the basics. But cash flow is still going to fit into every one of those that Gary just talked about. So we have to have cash flow very first, because this is how money moves in and out, right? So the goal is margin and liquidity, so you have freedom for both surprises and opportunities, okay? Then, actually, will you skip ahead for me here? Okay, so then I want to talk about asset allocation. Asset allocation in these 3 pillars is, where do we actually have our money sitting? Is it locked up in our 401k? Is it in our real estate? Is it sitting in our bank account? Is it hiding under your mattress? Like, where are we allocating our money at this current stage in our lives? Again, it's going to fit into one of those 4 stages that Gary talked about. Okay? And then overarching all of this is protection. So protection is the liability coverages we have, the insurance we have on our home, everything that allows us to keep and hang on to our money long term. Because if we don't have protection, then we are suscepting ourselves to unnecessary risk, right? We're putting ourselves in a position where risk can come in and wipe out whatever was in asset allocation. It can also take away whatever we have in cash flow, right? Those things can disappear without the right protections in place that enable us to actually hang on to and keep those assets.
Yeah, great points. One of the things I talk to clients about when I'm talking about the 3 pillars is it's very similar to going to your doctor and them looking at your blood work, right? So these things are really indications of financial health. Cash flow, which the great Zig Ziglar used to say all the time, cash flow, money is not everything. But I think once you have a family of 4 that's depending on your income, you start to realize pretty quickly that it's relatively close to oxygen. It's fairly important. And cash flow is the most important part about having money in your family. In reality, if you have consistent cash flow that will never go away, a fountain of youth when it comes to cash flow, having assets really doesn't even matter. You can get all the assets you want, and you don't need the ones that you currently have. You could go completely bankrupt as long as that cash flow continues, right? So it's important. And so protecting cash flow for most people is protecting the W-2 income coming in, which means life insurance in a lot of cases. In the future, if you have cash flow in real estate or something, then that is going to, protecting cash flow means more like an LLC or insurance or things like that. And then the last thing is 3 pillars. So you always, this is an overused thing, but if you think of 3 legs of a stool, it's important that all 3 of these are strong. So if you have a 3-legged stool, it's pretty solid. You can lean different directions when you're sitting on it. But if you get down to 2 legs, now it gets a little dicier, right? It's like being on a motorcycle or a bicycle. If the thing's not moving and you don't have your foot down, you're in trouble. Or if you only have one of them, it's a pogo stick. Try that one. So you need these 3 things. You need them fairly in balance. And when you go look at your hierarchy of wealth, when you go look at your WealthView 360 financial statement in your personal client portal right now, if you want, and when you do it meeting with your advisor, you're going to see things lined out exactly like this. On the left, it's your cash flows. It's talking about savings rate, but also income and expense. And then in the center is protection, protecting both cash flows and wealth. And then on the right-hand side is wealth. And it says wealth. It means asset allocation. It's a balance sheet. But then it also brings in hierarchy of wealth that we're going to talk about here in just a couple moments. Okay, so we've talked about your health along the journey, how strong, how resilient are you with the 4 dimensions. We've gone through the 3 pillars, which are an indication of, are there gaps here that we're worried about? Do we have great cash flow, but absolutely no asset allocation or no wealth, which means we may not want to retire tomorrow like we were potentially thinking about? Or do we not even really consider that we have no protection on the really important things in our lives? Okay, then the next one is the stages of life. So this is something that most people in America are probably very comfortable with. And so I won't spend a ton of time on this. But if you think about life, it's about climbing this mountain and then coming down the other side. So the first half of it is growth. It's building wealth. It's accumulating those assets. Again, if we knew that our cash flow would continue for the rest of our entire lives, we wouldn't need wealth. Like, growing assets is only so that we have resources. It's like storing gasoline when the gas pumps are no longer available because the hurricane just hit Florida. Right? You want to store some stuff for that time when you're unable to bring in the money or whatever. Maybe your business is bringing in the cash, and you don't want to own the business until your last breath. So you want to store some cash so you don't have to continue being so actively involved, perhaps. There's a lot of reasons why people grow wealth so that they can get rid of cash flow, but anyway, you have to grow the wealth to be able to create cash flowing assets that are not you going to work every day, if that's your goal.
Yeah, and I just want to add to this too. So when you, even just looking at the image that they were sharing on the screen here a moment ago, as growth is coming up, right? So imagine this as we are walking up a mountain and you get to the peak someday and you say, okay, now I have to change my mindset, because that is exactly what it is. It is a mindset shift to go from I'm going to accumulate assets to I need to distribute assets effectively. And it may or may not be surprising, but some of the most difficult conversations with clients and some of the biggest issues to solve when it comes to financial strategy is this right here. It's that mindset shift from I don't need to grow anymore. I need to know how to distribute effectively, but we don't think of it that way because that's not the framework that most people operate their finances within. The framework that we operate within is put your money in your 401k and put it in your brokerage accounts and let it go as much as you can possibly handle, right? Just let it grow. And then we don't know what to do when we get to that point of it's time to distribute. So there is an absolute mindset shift that has to take place there in order for this money to effectively distribute and do what you want it to do so that you can live the lifestyle you want to live.
Yeah, great points, and that's a really important conversation to have years before you make that shift, not right as you're making the shift. It's a very uncomfortable time for people because the rules are almost completely opposite from what actions you're taking accumulating wealth to actions you're taking when you want to distribute it in your retirement years. Lots of things are different. Your tax rates are often higher in retirement. You take different actions when the economy or when the market is down than you do when you want to plow extra money in at a lower, like dollar cost averaging a concept. Totally opposite approaches, and it's something you need to learn. No one really prepares, my experience, no one prepares us for how to operate in income distribution, but they all help us with growth, but no one tells us how to successfully get down the other side of the mountain again.
Okay, now let's talk about purpose, right? Again, 4, 3, 2, 1. Everything dials back to purpose. What is the purpose behind all of this for you personally? Because everybody's purpose is different, right? I can't tell you what your purpose is. You have to figure that out. And if we don't know what the purpose is, if we don't know why we are doing this, if we don't understand why we're putting a framework in place, why we're saving, growing, protecting capital, we're going to end up way off of where we thought we were going to be, right? Because purpose is the fuel behind every decision that we make along the way. So if we are making a decision to buy 15 rental properties, what's the purpose of that? Why are we doing it? What are we buying 15 rental properties for? If we don't have a purpose, you may not end up anywhere close to that, or you're going to get there and you're going to stand there and look at it and say, okay, what do I do now? What's the point of having all these rental properties? And you may hate it. You may think it's the worst choice you ever made and you spent 5 years or 10 years building it.
Yeah.
We don't want to spend half of our lives building something that we don't even know what the point of it is, right? So we really need to spend the time, the effort, the energy now to define what our financial purpose is so that we can build out a framework appropriate for that purpose.
We say here at Paradigm Life that everybody's purpose, when you distill it down, is legacy. And I've had a lot of pushback on that. I personally pushed back on that because I've met a lot of clients that are in their 30s and 40s when they are grinding hard. If they interpret what you say about legacy to mean you may not know this, but you want to leave a bunch of money to your kids. And a lot of times people in that age are like, no, I don't. That's not what we're talking about, but I understand that pushback. And the reason they may not want to do that is because they just had to work their tail off to be able to just put food on the table. They're not working that hard every day so that their kids don't have to work in the future. That's something that you start thinking about maybe in your 50s and 60s or maybe when you get grandkids. But it's often not the thing. So if that's you and you hear the word legacy and you're like, I'm not working this hard just to make them millionaires so they don't have to do anything, I agree. That's a bad idea, and I understand why you think that way. That's not really what we mean about legacy. Legacy is not the money. Often money comes with that, but legacy is your purpose. It's like when they're at your funeral and they're like, this is what Gary was about. This is what Jaden was about. And this is what they taught me. That's your legacy, what you leave behind you in other people. It's what you've taught people and how you've made their world a better place. That's what we mean by legacy. And so it comes back to just your purpose. Your purpose is to share the things that are important to you, experience things in life, and make sure that, if possible, others know what those experiences are so that their life is improved as well. So in the end, it's legacy, but it doesn't mean hand a bunch of money to the next generation. That probably comes along, and if it does, then we're talking about trusts and written documents and things like that, which we do help every client with. Talk to your advisor if you don't have a will and living trust package. We're using a fantastic process called wealth.com. Many of our clients are adopting into it and very happy. So that is a process that we can help with. It's not really what we mean by purpose being legacy. Legacy simply means what you want to leave to others as your gift to others who follow on behind you.
And I'm just going to add one thing to this really quick, but purpose can change as well, right? I don't want this to be mistaken for we need to decide the purpose now, and that is the same as it's going to be in 40 years, because I can almost guarantee it won't be, right? It's okay for purpose to change, but it's the same thing as saying, I'm going to go to the gym every day, and right now my goal is, if you guys can see me on camera, my goal is to put on 50 pounds. So I'm not the guy trying to lose the weight, I'm trying to gain the weight. So right now, if my goal is to gain 50 pounds, well, in 10 years, maybe that's not going to be my goal anymore. But the fact that I set the goal and achieve the goal still gets me closer to maybe what the bigger picture purpose becomes for you, so that you can look back in 20 years and say, okay, I understand how I got to the place that I'm at. It's a lot better if we can look back and say we at least understood how we got there, than we just wake up one day and say, crap, how did I get here? What happened along the way?
The goal is to quantify these things or to think about them and then provide a framework for you and your advisor, to your wealth strategist, to together be able to talk about and for it to be your compass. So we've talked about 4 different things here. And so go back to your real estate, buying 15 rental properties. It's not really the purpose of the rental properties so much. That would be nice to know, but it's really about what is my purpose holistically. And maybe your purpose holistically is to be able to go to another country for 2 years, go to South Africa for 2 years and work in a mission. Having a bunch of rental properties is not going to support that. It'll support cash flow, but you're going to be so busy that the whole thing is going to fall apart if you're not paying attention. So you need systems and other things in place. So the real estate is not a hard no in that case necessarily, but you need other things. You need management team. You need a bunch of other things in place that you need to think about. And then, does this support my building wealth in this current stage, or maybe I'm in the distribution stage, and does it support there? So you just go through these 3 things, the 4 dimensions, the 3 pillars, the 2 life stages, and your purpose. Make sure that those are all a fit, because when your buddy says it's a good idea and they got a nice financial return on that is not the right reason, or the only reason at least, to go and change what you're doing and go put all your money there. Awesome. All right. So the financial operating system. Okay, so 2 things that we want to talk about. The financial operating system are these 4 things. That's 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the operating system. It's what we have built out technology and a client portal, your private client portal at Paradigm Life, to enable you to use these tools to interact with your wealth strategist and to make sure that you remain on the right path and that it's achieving the purpose that you want to get to. And there's a few things that kind of get in our way, and Jaden's going to get into a bit more detail about this. But the first one is this paradox between having structure and freedom. So in the military, when we had structure, it was called our boss telling us exactly what we could and could not do. And I'm not talking about just getting up, when you have to get up, what you have to wear. But on the nuclear submarines, it was 1,000 things every day that you could do, can't do, and all kinds of things. So structure was there. But it grated against us all the time because it was somebody else putting the structure in place. We want freedom from structure, right? That's just a human thing. I want to be my own person. The crazy thing about that is that if you have no structure in your life that you've created, you're not free, you're just in chaos. So structure needs to be there. It's awesome and it's better if it's us putting it in place, but it needs to be there in some manner. And then what Jaden talked about earlier, this optimization versus suppression. So I just think of these 2 personally as abundant mindset with optimization. How can I make things better? How can I improve? Maybe it's my income, or more efficiently store my cash, spend it efficiently on the things that are really matter, versus suppression, which to me is scarcity. Suppression is tamping down your creativity, and it's also budgeting and doing a bunch of things. Don't take that trip because we're on a budget. I'm on a fixed income, right? All those kinds of things, that's suppressing the human, and we don't want to put you in that direction. So those are things we keep in mind as we make recommendations for all of you.
Okay, so to take that concept a little bit deeper here for a moment and really start to paint a better picture and put the puzzle together. Let's just say for a moment, I'm going to give another example. Let's say we want to make $1 million this year. Your goal in your business is $1 million. But you sit down and you think about it and you look at the big picture and you say, okay, I don't have any marketing. I don't have any processes. Right now I have no clients. I have no product. I don't know what the outcome is. Like, how am I going to get from step one over here to my $1 million? You have nothing. It's because you don't have a framework, right? You have no framework in place. All of those little pieces are just the framework of your business that tells your business, here's how we're going to operate this year so that we can get to that $1 million mark. And the exact same thing applies to your personal finances. If we don't put a framework in place for our personal finances, because think about most businesses, most people would not say it's crazy for a business to have a framework and structure and systems and processes, right? But a lot of people look at their personal financial picture and have none of those things and assume they're still going to get a good outcome. So we need to have the same things there. Treat your personal finances just like you would treat the business. Will you go forward for me one?
Sure.
Thank you. So I'm going to share a little personal real estate story to, again, help paint this picture a little bit better. But I started investing in real estate probably 11 years ago now. And when I initially got into it, the way that I got into it is through partnerships. So I had two partners at the time, and we bought just a couple of small properties. We bought one in Florida and one in Tennessee. These were what they call turnkey real estate, if you're familiar with that. And if you've heard of people buying them in Florida and Tennessee, these were cheap properties, right? We paid $70,000 for each of them. So we got into the system, and in my mind at the time, all I was thinking is, real estate looks cool. This looks like something I want to try. I've been thinking about it for a long time. This looks like a way for me to get into it. And my intent with it was to generate cash flow. I thought, okay, we can just go out and buy 30 or 40 properties. I can generate cash flow with that, and I can replace income. Okay, so I had this broad idea in mind of what I wanted to do. So we go out, we buy the properties, we get a couple years into it, and they're doing okay. They could be doing better. There's a lot of reasons why they weren't. One of them is we were not super engaged in it, and we didn't have a lot of systems around that. But what ended up happening was one of the partners said that he wanted to get out. He wanted to sell the properties, or at least get his portion out and move on to other things. And at the time, the way that I thought about that was, okay, I feel a little bit of urgency. There's some pressure here to decide what I'm going to do. I like real estate. He doesn't like real estate. Should I buy him out, or should we just sell the properties and move on? And I let the social pressure of the situation get to me, and I said, you know what, let's just go ahead and sell the properties. Let's move on. We sold them. What happened over the next 2 or 3 years is absolutely nothing. Didn't buy any more properties, didn't do anything. And the reason I didn't do anything is because I had no idea what the purpose was at that point, right? I didn't know why I was buying real estate anymore. I didn't know whether I wanted to keep buying real estate, whether I wanted to just let it go and move into other types of investments. And so I just sat on it for a while. Fast forward a couple of years, and I built a framework, I built a process, and I decided, what is the purpose of all the investing that I'm doing? Why am I spending all this time and energy learning about these things? And from the point that I decided on that framework and that process to today, we've quadrupled our real estate portfolio, right? But we've done it with a very clear idea, and with only investing in deals and with partners and in places that meet that exact need, right? So we have a framework, and the framework said, here are the exact things I'm trying to accomplish. If this deal, if this partnership, if this thing does not work towards that purpose, I'm not going to do it. It doesn't fit in the framework, so it's not going to be part of our picture anymore.
So that was a great example, Jaden, of goals being in conflict, meaning goals from two partners being in conflict. And a mutual friend of ours, Jason Hartman, would always say that the hardest ship to sail is a partnership. So it can be challenging, right? Because of that, because we're not the same person, and so over time we diverge away. So this one is an example, a pretty common one that we've covered already, but not so much. This is really about the strategy of the wealth building and then income or distribution. And so I won't get too much into this, but this is an example of you having a goal, right? Your goal is to live an inspired retirement that you don't run out of money. You never worry about money. You get to visit the grandkids and you get to go on trips that you didn't go on during your building years because you hadn't set up your life to be able to do both. And that's really the common American path. And probably starting off, most people are just worried about having enough in retirement. They're not thinking so much about, I just love to leave all of this to my grandkids. But that comes along the way when you're far more comfortable with everything. And the problem is that you and your advisor, your market-based financial advisor, have two different goals. And not overtly, and maybe you don't even both sit together and talk about this, but your financial advisor's role, their perspective, is that they are a financial professional whose job it is to manage your money, make sure you don't lose too much, make sure they grow it enough so that you can live the future that you want to live. But for you to live the future in retirement that you want to live, they have to hold on to the money. And actually, most of them are compensated by holding on to your money. So you want to distribute it and have a wonderful retirement and use it during your lifetime, yet the mechanism that's in place and the perspective of the person who's driving this train for you is to not spend it slowly and be very super conservative, and then we end up passing a tremendous amount to our kids. And so that's just an example of two people's goals, you and your advisor's goals, are not in alignment on what you want to do in retirement. There's a book that's been popularized here recently called Die with Zero. And the idea is live it during your life. Spend the time around your grandkids and your kids and have these wonderful life experiences with them because you spend more. Don't save and scrimp so that you end up with your entire 401k around at the end. And in concept, I think that's tremendous. And it's caught traction with some clients of ours, or at least people we've talked to. The challenge there is that you don't know how long you're going to live. And that's always been the issue. If you tell me what day you're going to die, I will glide you in there and make a perfect landing right on the numbers Delta Airlines does. But none of us know what that date is. And you also don't know what your needs and desires will be out in the future. So how many times exactly you're going to have to repair the house between now and then? Like, you just don't know the answers to these things. What is your medical condition going to look like? So we don't know those things. And the Die with Zero thing, in concept, is great. And we try to help and we will help our clients with having that wealth maximization account or your overfunded family banking policy. Just having that in place, have a conversation with your wealth strategist on how can I use that resource to help me in 6 to 8 different ways to optimize, to increase what I'm spending in retirement and still not worry about running out of money or not passing to the kids what I wanted to pass them. Living Your Life Insurance, our friend Kim Butler, who's been on all of the previous live streams, has some wonderful books out on those topics, and they're actually linked in the back of your workbook. All right, now we're going to jump into hierarchy of wealth. Jaden, you want to lead us off on this one?
Yeah, so hopefully, again, most of you have already seen this, but I'm going to add a little bit of additional context to it today as well. A lot of the conversation up to this point has been on purpose and these frameworks and things, right? And the hierarchy of wealth is meant to fit in as one of those frameworks. It is a framework for us to get a clear idea of, okay, how much risk am I taking on and how much control do I actually have over my capital? The thing that I want to hit on here before I let Gary take over for a minute is this is just a framework. This does not make decisions for you. This gives you a picture of here's where I am today, and here's what we have seen actually work, and we have some statistical data to back it up and say this works for people, this gives them the ability to maintain control of their assets. But again, it's just a framework. The framework doesn't do anything for us. It doesn't help if we don't understand the purpose behind it, if we're not plugging in the right data, and if we don't have the right mindset behind it before we use the framework.
It's a point of departure. It's a stepping off point. That's a great point. So if you look behind us, you'll see that the hierarchy of wealth back of there has control versus risk. And we didn't put that on this one that's on the screen for the more colorful version. So I just wanted to make a point and remind everybody that the concept here is that since you are building the wealth, the assets for your family for maybe a few generations, but definitely your entire life. You're building something that needs to last several decades. And so like the Egyptians who built their pyramids, you want to make sure that it had a nice stable shape and foundation and that you didn't skip any steps. Don't just say, you know what, I'm done with tier 1. I'm bored. I'm going to go to 2 and maybe 3 and just go straight up to 4. The thing falls over, right? So that's why we're using this analogy, just like that's why Abraham Maslow used it when he had it for a hierarchy of needs. So there's the right brick in the right place based on where am I today? And so that's what allows you to have maximum control and minimum risk. So the tier 1 assets, high control. Tier 2, directly owned investments, high control. So again, I'm making the assumption that most of you know what this is, and you went on your online client portal and you've looked at your own personalized hierarchy of wealth being distributed or being represented, and then you can compare it to the ideal asset, which again is a stepping off point, not necessarily what you have to get to. Again, how we use this is we're getting ready to meet with a client and they have a question for us. Should I use my policy, a loan against my policy? Should I just spend the money that's in my policy now because I'm in retirement? These questions come up all the time and we love getting these questions. The answer is always, it depends. First question, is your Wealth View 360, is it accurate? Meaning your 3 pillars, do they have the right things in there? Are they accurately represented? And if that's true, then we can click over to Hierarchy of Wealth and it's also accurately represented. And then we can compare it to an ideal situation, and it's very quick for us to be able to make a recommendation to you or answer your question. Yeah, that's a good point. You have 20% in your tier 1 liquid assets, which includes your life insurance policy and your savings and checking accounts, and that's good. 15% is the minimum. Anywhere from 15 up to 40 is tremendous. And so you're a bit over that, so you could certainly use this to buy that next car for the business. But I also noticed that you have a bunch of stuff in the markets. Do you like what you have in the markets? Actually, you know what? I was thinking about selling some of my dogs, and my tax rate right now supports it. Great. Why don't we take it from red and put it down into tier 2, which is a directly owned asset, which is where that new truck for your business belongs. Okay, so that's the idea, is look at this thing and how do we reposition to achieve what you asked us is the right answer to do. And sometimes the right answer is use the policy. It's a perfect fit. So tier 2 is all of those things, those investments that you directly own. And we're looking to achieve somewhere in the 30 to 40% for that one. And again, so this is your real estate, your business. It's the investments that you put in yourself and your spouse for you all bringing in a higher W-2 income, getting promotions. All those investments are things that you are in very high controlled position, which means that your risk is low because you're involved. And then you move from there up to more indirect investing. It is still collateral based, but you're in less control. You're sitting in the back seat. Somebody else is driving the car that has your investment in it now. You can make recommendations. You can go visit things. But in the end, you really cannot control the outcome as much as you could when you are in direct control. So I put a little house in both of those, cute little house there in both of those pictures because you can own rental real estate in actually 2, 3, and 4. It's not actually the asset itself that is determining what tier it's in. It's more your interaction with it. So if you directly own it, you go by and you check on it, you can call the manager, you can tell them exactly what to do and when to do it, you can vet the tenant, then you're operating that from a tier 2 position and you're very high control. You're very low risk. If you instead are lending money to somebody else to go buy a property, or you're in an investment kind of syndication fund with a bunch of other people in a passive manner, then you've taken on more risk. And I don't want to sound detrimental here, but that risk walks around on 2 legs and may not make decisions that you agree with. And so I said detrimental. I don't want to be pessimistic is what I meant to say. All right. And then you could be speculating as well. You could be betting on real estate futures. You could have your money in a real estate investment trust. And you're so far removed, you don't know where the property is anymore that your money's in, or even that it's even in a single family home. So that hopefully helps you understand. It's just a refresher on the hierarchy of wealth. I know all of you have one of these. You've probably, hopefully all seen one. If not, it's time to have a meeting with your advisor. I meet with people all the time who have had their policies for quite a while. They've had their Wealth View 360 set up for several years, and it's just not your day job. It's not things you think about all the time. So I just wanted to reinforce the purpose. And since I have the nickel here, I want to talk about real estate. We here at Paradigm Life, certainly myself, certainly Jaden, really believe in a lot of benefits of directly owned real estate, of owning 1 to 4 families, owning an apartment building maybe someday. And the reason is because of that level of control that you're in. And many people don't do it because they're too busy, they say, or they just don't know, like they're not comfortable with it. But I would just ask you to consider, you live in a house, you probably own a house, or your parents have owned a house that you've lived in, and you get it, right? Like your payments are bigger than when you were renting, but it's because you're putting equity in your own pocket. And yes, when things need fixed, you have to fix them. You can't call the landlord. However, you can make good decisions about buying something that doesn't wear out and doing preventative maintenance and all these things that you can actually do. And because we live in a world where we print currency, there is inflation, buying hard assets like gold and silver and real property has been the fundamental way to hold on to wealth throughout American history, throughout world history, really. And so when you take into account the fact that you can get really good long-term fixed rate, low interest rate loans, the fact that it's something of universal need, I think about all of these businesses that my clients own. Some of them are in industries that are not going to exist in a few years. And there's going to be a lot of employees that they're trying to take care of, right? And is their business going to be worth anything? The last dentist sold his. I don't think AI is going to do dentistry for us anytime in the near future, but Elon Musk thinks his robots will. Or maybe we get rid of cavities, right? So there's things that industries that are going to go away, but it's not likely in our lifetimes, in our kids' lifetimes, that actually having a shelter over you to sleep inside at night, that's likely going to go away. So I wanted to talk about that. Now, how about this part of, man, I don't know how to get started. I don't know what to do. You surround yourself with professionals and with advisors who help you out. And so we as wealth strategists can make recommendations on maybe who to interview, always interview 2 or 3 different places, but we can help you out with some ideas of places, locations, states in America, types of properties that we've had success with. I'd be happy to meet with all of you if you have questions about that. Obviously, I'm very much into getting people comfortable having real estate because it is in a tremendous way to protect and grow the wealth for your family and to start generating that passive cash flow that you can depend on. And I was very fortunate to find a great guy who is actually the only lender and real estate portfolio strategist that we have at Paradigm Life. His name is Aaron Chapman. You can find him. Your wealth strategist knows who Aaron is. He's met most of us, and you can find him actually on the link at the bottom of your workbook. Tremendous guy. He will help you sequence out mortgages. He'll help you with the asset protection, answer your questions about LLCs. Has just been an incredible guy that has really helped me grow a sizable portfolio over the last 15 years. It's my recommendation. Just think about it. Take that step and see if it's something that is comfortable for you and your family. Okay, so we're going to click through some quick ones. So these are the exact same thing, but if you looked back on our other one, we said 15 to 30% down here. We said 15 to 25% or so here. And then both of these up here combined, we're trying to stay 25% or lower combined up here. And so in one of the previous seminars or one of the previous live streams, Patrick went through some of these. And it was really just a goal to help you understand, where do we come up with these numbers? Did we just pull them out of a hat? No, actually, we went and looked at what do other successful financial institutions and entities do. And so this is a family office. So if you're not familiar with the term family office, when your family gets large enough, generational, with several $1 million, you can it's more cost effective to hire some people to come and work directly for your family. And they're very sophisticated, this team typically, and they do things like lend money and own real estate and own businesses. And you can see that their numbers are fairly similar to what we do. And you can see this repeated in several other industries. Here's the great Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett owns a bunch of businesses, and you can see that he's holding a bunch of cash equivalent T-bills, short-term type guaranteed assets in Tier 1. And he's holding a lot of property and equipment and businesses up here, but his percentages are pretty consistent with what we just looked at for the other 2 options, the family office and what we recommend at Paradigm Life. And then finally, banks. A lot of people don't know that banks own a tremendous amount of life insurance down here as their liquid safe resource, but they have to hold Tier 1 liquidity. This is, I think, why we call this Tier 1. And it's in the same 13-15% kind of range, right? And then Tier 2, they own a ton of real estate and other assets. So again, it just repeats what we looked at before. All right.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit here for a moment then. This is probably the topic I was most excited to talk about today, because I think more than ever this topic applies. In the past, it wasn't quite as big of a deal, but would you share the chart too? So it's this idea that, like, why as smart, educated, sophisticated people, why do we still sometimes make bad financial decisions? And this is going to be maybe a little hard to see on the screen because it does look quite small.
Very hard.
But it's this idea of cognitive bias, right? Of a lot of bias in our lives. We have a lot of influence. We have social pressures. We have this thing I mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation today called AI that is playing a huge role in how we make decisions. And I'll just say from my perspective, talking to clients every day and dealing with all sorts of investments and different things that we talk about here. AI has gotten to a point where it plays such a huge role in how we make financial decisions that it's actually throwing people off and causing major life-changing things to happen in some cases, just simply because it's a part of our life and we are learning to trust it, and sometimes we let it dictate a little too much for us. First thing you're seeing on the screen right now, present bias. So this just means it favors immediate comfort. And
we make decisions that favor immediate comfort.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? So we are making decisions that are, how do we just feel better? And AI trains us to do this, even though we already as human beings do it to start. But now I can sit down and I can type in ChatGPT for 2 or 3 minutes, and it's going to give me the exact answer that I want, because ChatGPT is essentially set up to make us happy, right? Like, that's what it's there to do, is it wants to make us happy. So an experience that I thought would be helpful to share regarding that is a few months ago we were dealing with some legal stuff, and I had to talk to an attorney. Like, we were setting up some different things. And before I talked to the attorney, though, I used ChatGPT and ran through a bunch of different scenarios. And I plugged in some stuff, and I spent, 30, 45 minutes just walking through and asking it some questions. And I noticed the further I got into the conversation, the more it would tend to lean on the side that I wanted it to. So I got to the end of that conversation, and the answers that it was giving me basically made me feel like, okay, we're in good shape. I don't have to do anything. This is going to be a really easy conversation with the attorney. He'll get things set up for us, and we move along. Well, we get on with the attorney, and he's like, no, that's not right. This is not right. Can't do this. Let's change this to this. And the lesson in that was sometimes we can get so caught up in either our own personal biases or biases that people incorporate for us, or more so recently, biases that are developed because of AI and things like that, that it can destroy our frameworks and pull us off of the pathway that we thought we were on without us even realizing it. Okay? And it can really throw off a lot of things. So it's important to just understand that these biases exist. And I think just earlier today, actually, Gary and Patrick and I were talking, and there was a statistic that said something like, just knowing that the bias exists enables you to actually avoid it, right? Like, the fact that we know it exists is what's going to enable us to avoid the problem becoming a problem. Because if we don't even know it exists, that's when it's a bias and we just fall into it.
Yeah. And then there was the G.I. Joe one, which I thought was pretty cool, which is that if I know these exist, I'm smart enough to avoid my bias. And that doesn't play out in human nature. That is just somebody who's got an ego or an overly confident perspective of themselves. So the status quo one, what is that about, Jaden?
Yeah, so status quo is basically, let's say 80% of 401k holders make 0 trades over 2 years,
yeah,
right? Because the status quo is we're just going to maintain. We're just going to hold out. We're just going to see what happens because that's what we've been told to do. In fact, most people that I talk to that have, let's say, your typical 401k IRA through their job, it may have sat for 15 years and they haven't done anything with it. They've never really even looked at it, right? That happens a lot because we follow the status quo. We just follow whatever anybody else is doing. So that becomes a bias for us when we go to make financial decisions as well.
Yeah. Deciding not to take any action is still an action. You've made a decision there. Okay, and we talked about the overconfidence side, I think. That is, in my experience, has been in investing and in business and in the military operations, that has been the most painful. That has had the most significant impact on people and operations. Not having hubris, that's rough. Not being humble is rough. Okay. All right, so we're getting closer, my friend. Systems thinking. So we've reinforced and pushed, like the whole point of doing this 4-3-2-1 was for you to understand that there are 4 dimensions that we travel through sometimes, and sometimes we go back and forth. It's not always linear, but understanding where you are will help. How strong am I on this thing I'm thinking about doing? If I'm just barely into certainty, financial certainty, but I have this desire to start a business and quit my job, that's probably not a good call right now at this moment, right? Like, what steps do I need to put in place to be ready to move to the next level? Same thing with the 3 pillars, with the 2 different stages of your life, and then the one purpose. Always go back to that one purpose to filter it through there and say, is this getting me to what the most important thing is that's going on in my life, in this chapter of my life? 4321 actually provides the system that we use to help our clients make decisions, make daily decisions, and also how we help them improve their situation, get from certainty to thriving, to independence, and to freedom if that's where they want to head. Not everybody has to get to freedom, but I don't know why you would dislike getting to freedom if you had the opportunity.